How good will Indiana be this upcoming college football season? We got to talk about it. I want to give a special shout out to the sponsor of this video, Manscaped. So Manscaped recently just launched their Lawnmower 4.0. And listen, if you are a guy who does a lot of shaving underneath, the Lawnmower 4.0 is the perfect tool for you because, listen, my first time shaving a couple of months ago went terrible. I had a bunch of scrapes, I had a bunch of bruises, and I also had patches because I didn't finish the job. So when Manscaped sent me the Lawnmower 4.0, I used it, and I was a little bit scared, okay? Because I was like, I ain't trying to give myself patches and give myself injuries like I did last time, my first time shaving. But when I used the Lawnmower 4.0, let me tell you guys something. It was a easy process. I had no scrapes, no bruises. It was no pain. Listen, if you're a guy who does a lot of shaving underneath, make sure that you guys go ahead and cop the Lawnmower 4.0 using my promo code JT for 20% off plus free shipping off your Manscaped purchase. Once again, make sure that you guys use promo code JT for 20% off your purchase plus free shipping. Your balls will thank you. The Indiana Hoosiers. Normally when you think about Indiana, you think about basketball, but their football team has made a lot of noise over the last couple of seasons. In 2019, they went 8-5. In 2020, last year, they were one of the biggest stories in college football, finishing with a record of 6-2. Now, head coach Tom Allen is my favorite coach in all of college football. I have a friend who I played Pop Warner ball with back in my childhood days who currently plays for the Indiana football team. And he had nothing but great things to say about Tom Allen. Like, Tom Allen brings this unique energy. And it's like, when you're around Tom Allen, he gets the most out of all the players on his team. Like, players want to run through a brick wall for Tom Allen. And you can tell the connection that Tom Allen has with his players. Like, his players love him. And on top of that, he is a really good guy when it comes to, getting players to believe in themselves. And when you have a guy like a Tom Allen, similar to a PJ Fleck, a lot of people call these guys car salesmen. Well, these guys who you guys try to, insult by calling them car salesmen, these guys end up being really good coaches when it comes to the recruiting trail, which is a big reason why we've seen Indiana have a huge jump in recruiting over the last couple of years, because Tom Allen is really good when it comes to getting players to buy in to what he's trying to build in Indiana. And I believe that Indiana has a really good team. As a matter of fact, I believe that Indiana is a top 15 team heading into this upcoming college football season, and I feel like this is the second best team in the Big Ten. You look at quarterback Michael Penick Jr. last year, he got his season cut short due to a season-ending injury, but he threw for 1,645 yards, 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and he also was able to make things happen with his legs. Now, he's coming back fully healthy. He is one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. So, not really much that needs to be said at a quarterback position there. You have one of the best in the game, okay? Now, halfback is kind of a question mark because they lost Stevie Scott, who was their leading rusher last year. He was their best halfback on their team. He left for the NFL draft. Now you're looking at halfbacks, Tim Baldwin, Samson James. Then you have Davion Irvin Pondexter, who is 5'10", 190 pounds. This guy was a walk-on, and he had a really good spring. As a matter of fact, he ended up being the most outstanding player on offense, along with transfer wide receiver from FSU, Devon Matthews, who we'll talk about later on. He also won the Chris Betty Award, which is given to the walk-on player of the year in honor of the late former Hoosier walk-on Chris Betty. So halfback is a little bit of a question mark there. Yeah, you pretty much have some talented guys there in that halfback room, but you don't really have guys there who have like a lot of production like you had in Stevie Scott. So they're going to be looking for answers there. They're going to be seeing who's going to end up stepping up there and who ends up becoming that RB RB1, but they also could be in the market to obtain another halfback. 5-star recruit out of USC, Stephen Carr, who was a 5-star halfback coming out of high school a couple of years ago. He entered the transfer portal, and a lot of people have him linked to Indiana because he has some familiarity with a couple of guys on that Indiana coaching staff. So they could end up having another halfback join the fold there in Stephen Carr. Interesting to see if he ends up joining or not. So the next thing is the offensive line going to improve when it comes to run blocking? Now, this offensive line was pretty good when it came to pass blocking, but run blocking wasn't their strong suit. As a matter of fact, Indiana had one of the worst rushing attacks in all of college football last year. They averaged 3.3 yards per carry, which was 111th in the nation, and they only averaged 111 rushing yards per game as a team, which was 118th in all of college football. So this rushing game definitely has to improve if they're looking to try to take that next step in terms of being able to contend and compete with Ohio State. Now, one thing that hurt them last year was the fact that they weren't really balanced. They were pretty much going pass heavy. On top of that, they got down earlier in that game, but if they were able to have more success running the football, then it definitely could have had a really good chance of winning that game. Now, the wide receiver position is really good. Now, they lost Walt Philfire to the NFL draft, but they also returned Ty Fogel, who has 721 receiving yards, 37 receptions, and 7 touchdowns. He also averaged 19 yards per reception. He's going to be one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten this year. You also have Miles Marshall. You have DJ Matthews, who was a former highly rated recruit coming out of high school a couple of years ago. He's from my city, Jacksonville, Florida. He played for Trinity Christian, which is one of the most dominant high schools in the Jacksonville area. Along there, you have Raines. You also have Bowles, which is the same high school that Mac Jones came from. Now, he didn't really get a lot of opportunities at FSU, and it's not because he didn't start. He had a pretty good amount of playing time at FSU. It's just that the quarterback situation wasn't really all that ideal. Then he ended up sitting out all last year, 2020. He ended up hitting the transfer portal. Then he ended up transferring to Indiana, which I felt like was a really good fit. And he had a really good spring practice for Indiana this whole entire spring. A lot of people were raving about him. I had a fan of Indiana actually hit me up and tell me about DJ Matthews, and it's crazy because I didn't even know Indiana had a lot of football fans up there, but apparently Indiana has a really good fan base up there when it comes to football. So DJ Matthews won co-awards with the guy I mentioned earlier, Davion Irvin Pondexter, for the most outstanding player on the offense during the spring season for Indiana. This guy had a bunch of good practices. He made a lot of good plays. So I'm expecting DJ Matthews to have a really good season for Indiana this year. I don't really know what he's going to play. I don't know if they're going to utilize him in the slot or if he's going to play outside, but I definitely feel like DJ Matthews is going to have a really great season for Indiana. Now, the defense. I think that Indiana has one of the best defenses in the Big Ten. Okay, you have the best cornerback duo in the Big Ten, and maybe one of the best quarterback duos in all of college football with cornerbacks Jalen Williams and Tywan Mullen. Those guys combined for 7 interceptions last year. Jalen Williams had 4, and Tywan Mullen had 3 on top of that with 4 pass deflections. Now, you also have returning safety Devon Matthews, who also comes from the city that I currently reside in Jacksonville, Florida. He played for Reball High School. He had a really good season last year. He had an interception, a couple of pass deflections, and he also had 40 tackles as well. I expect him to be a very critical part of that defense this year. So when you look at Indiana, they have a really experienced secondary with a lot of talent there. As a matter of fact, you probably could make the argument and say that this is the best secondary in the Big Ten, because you look at Ohio State. We know Ohio State has a lot of 4-star and 5-star defensive backs in the roster, but Ohio Ohio State secondary wasn't even all that great last year. So you definitely look at Indiana, they definitely have probably the best secondary in the whole entire Big Ten Conference. Then you look at linebacker. Linebacker is also really good for Indiana as well. As a matter of fact, you have two of the best linebackers in the Big Ten. You have Michael McFadden, who had 59 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss. He had 2 picks, and he also had 6 sacks. This guy was a machine for Indiana. There's pretty much nothing that Michael McFadden couldn't do. Then you have another linebacker, Cam Jones, who had 35 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. So your linebacker position is really loaded. So the secondary is really good. The linebacker position is really good. But now the biggest area of concern, if you are a Indiana Hoosier fan, probably is the defensive line. Now, you lost Jerome Johnson, Javon Swan to the NFL draft. You also lost DeMar J. Lewis, defensive end, who ended up leaving for the transfer portal. Now, even though you had a couple of guys leave, especially DeMar J. Lewis, I think that's a pretty big loss. You still end up getting a couple of guys from the transfer portal. Like, you got defensive end Jaron Handy from Auburn. You got him from the transfer portal, former 4-star recruit when he was coming out of high school. You also got defensive tackle Weston Kramer. He's 6'2", 290 pounds. He is a grad transfer from NIU, aka Northern Illinois. He was the best defensive tackle in the MAC conference. He's one of the best defensive tackles in all of college football. Now, the reason why he decided to transfer to Indiana is because this is his last year of college football, having eligibility. So he's looking to get some good tape out there. Now, if he would have declared for the NFL draft last year, he probably would have been a 5th round or 4th round pick. Now that he's deciding to go to Indiana, he's trying to get some better film against better competition. So if he ends up being as good as what he was when he was at NIU, then Indiana is going to be having a stud on their defensive line. They're probably going to have one of the best defensive tackles in all of college football, and Weston Kramer. I really like him a lot. So when you look at Indiana, this is a really good team. And I definitely believe that, without a doubt, if Indiana was to play Ohio State today, I feel like they have a really good shot of being able to beat Ohio State. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Indiana becoming the next team up that could end up competing and giving Ohio State a run for their money, because Ohio State pretty much has won the Big Ten championship for pretty much every single season that I first started watching college football, and they really haven't been tested all that much. It's pretty much been a cakewalk, aside from a couple of screw-ups when they got upset a couple of years ago against Purdue and whatnot. Then you had a Wisconsin team that gave them a pretty competitive game a couple of years ago. Northwestern pushed them, but overall, Ohio State really hasn't had a team that could match them talent for talent. Now, Indiana, I don't think they're as talented as Ohio State, but I definitely think that this is the second most talented team in the Big Ten. If there was a team that I had to bet my money on to have a chance at beating Ohio State, I'll be betting all my money on Indiana. This is a team that has a lot of experience on the offensive line. They have one of the best secondaries in all of college football. Their linebacker position is great. You have one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football, and Michael Penick Jr. You also have Tom Allen, a really good coach. So Indiana, I think, is going to be a really good team this year, and I definitely wouldn't be surprised if they end up finishing in the top 10 by the end of the 2021 college football season. I like what Tom Allen has done in Indiana. This is an Indiana program that is definitely on the rise. They've had a spike in recruiting, and rightfully so, because of how good this team has been on the field, and also how good of a salesman Tom Allen is, and how much he's able to get these players to buy into what he's trying to build. I definitely think that this Indiana team is really dangerous. And a lot of people may be like, well, JT, they probably are going to end up being the next Minnesota, which I wouldn't get mad at you guys for saying this, but I strongly doubt they will fall off like how Minnesota did last year. Like, I kind of had a feeling that Minnesota was going to fall off because they lost a lot of guys to the draft and didn't really have that much talent returning on the roster last year. They had a lot of roster turnover, but you look at Indiana, they still have an offense that has a lot of experience there. You still have a lot of guys returning for this year. You have a really great secondary with a lot of guys who are veterans back there. You have a veteran linebacker group. So Indiana definitely is a team that I'm going to have my eye on this year. And I definitely feel like they can give Ohio State a run for their money this year in the Big Ten. So you guys let me know how you guys feel about Indiana this upcoming college football season. Are you guys buying into the hype? Do you guys feel like Indiana can contend with Ohio State? Or do you guys think Indiana could fall off this year and kind of drop off compared to what they were last year in 2020? Make sure that you guys like the video, comment, and subscribe for more NFL videos and college football videos. And thanks for watching.